560theanswer.com.
When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity, this afternoon at 2, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. The intersection of search engines and super thinking. This is interesting. Gabriel Weinberg is the CEO and co-founder of DuckDuckGo. That's the search engine that maintains your personal information. It's the alternative to Google that's often promoted, including by us. He's also a co-author of this book entitled Super Thinking, The Big Book of Mental Minds. His co-author is Lauren McCann. She's a statistician and researcher, contributor to the New England Journal of Medicine. She's got a PhD in operations research and a BS with honors in mathematics from MIT. Holy cow. You've got some super thinkers coming online here. Gabriel Weinberg, he has a BS with honors from MIT in physics and an MS from the MIT Technology and Policy Program.
I'm going to go now.
Holy. All right. Yeah, boy, that's, and we're about to bring in a lot of firepower, so strap it in. Gabriel Weinberg, Lauren McCann, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So before we get to the book, I mean, I just got to ask, in this environment, Gabriel, where there's a lot of talk, including a conversation we had last hour with Glenn Reynolds, Instapundit, about breaking up big tech, about regulating the Googles and the Facebooks and the Apples and so forth. As a competitor in the space, what's your view on it?
Yeah, I actually have an op-ed in the New York Times today about this very topic, and I really think we need strong privacy laws in the U.S., and there really is bipartisan support for it now. And in particular, the law that we're advocating for and have put model legislation out for is the Do Not Track law, which just would give consumers a really easy option to opt out of all this tracking across the internet.
And so you think if there was sort of a good practices standard on privacy adopted, it would obviate the need for antitrust prosecutions of the Googles of the world?
There's a lot of different, each of the big tech companies are different, but a lot of at the core is privacy issues. And so if you had strong privacy laws, that would obviate a lot of the need, and it would give consumers what they really want, which is an opportunity to opt out of these privacy harms on the internet.
And was that the genesis of your idea for DuckDuckGo, or the genesis of creating DuckDuckGo, the privacy issue?
Yeah, I mean, DuckDuckGo, we're offering that tool today. And so in a way, it's even counterproductive for our business. But we think that, the more people who have the opportunity to really reduce their digital footprint online, the better. And unfortunately, because of the dominance of big tech platforms, you can only do so much of the alternative. You can switch to DuckDuckGo as a private search engine, but still, there's lots of places you're getting tracked online. But if the government were to establish a facility where you could opt out of everything, including, your IoT devices at home and your smart TVs, and it would apply everywhere, that would be amazing.
So it blocks out the advertising trackers and it keeps your search history private and also takes control of your personal data. Why did you feel that we needed to have this? Because I love the idea.
Well, I realized early on that things were just getting more and more creepy online, and you could see the harms if you were studying them. It relates to the book because a lot of these models around unintended consequences are actually predictable if you kind of know what you're looking for. And for example, when you start tailoring searches based on your search history, you create these filter bubbles and echo chambers, and that just leads to more polarization. And that was what was exploited by Russia and is exploited by others to kind of hurt our democracy. And so you need kind of an escape hatch from that, and that's what DuckDuckGo provides.
So nice, a perfect transition then to the book, Super Thinking, the Big Book of Mental Models, and how this influences perhaps how DuckDuckGo works as well. But the idea of, just kind of tackling how people think, giving them maybe handles to think more efficiently and effectively. For example, let's just start in the first chapter here, being wrong less. What are some of the tricks of the trade, as it were, to be wrong less?
It's all about kind of slowing down. And I think mental models in general is just kind of a fancy word for concept. And there are a lot of these concepts you mentioned kind of are different degrees at the top. You learn all these different concepts in different disciplines, and most of them aren't useful outside, but some of them are. So, for example, I was a physics major, and I learned about critical mass, which is the mass needed to make a nuclear explosion. But that's actually very useful outside of physics. So businesses can have critical mass. When you're analyzing like these big tech thing we were talking about, part of the problem is these products get critical mass, and then they have like these runaway issues. But then like a political movement can have critical mass. A party, like you throw at your house, can have critical mass. And so if you know a lot of these concepts, you can start to think analytically and understand the world around you. But it's really about slowing down and not trying to just act off your gut and really trying to understand what's going on.
It seems to me, too, one of the challenges people have, is just they're sort of, like, I think, complementary challenges, the lack of institutional memory and the inability to connect dots. And so I'm thinking about how, like, what one app that I use is Evernote. So just to sort of memorialize what you're thinking at the time and remind yourself why on this issue this connects to that and so on and so forth, because nobody has perfect recall, but that can help you do it. And so I wonder if that's part of what you're talking about. The news reporting we get often lacks institutional memory, lacks context, and so we sort of keep repeating the same stories covered in the same superficial way over and over again.
You're absolutely right. I mean, so that brings to mind a couple of models to put a name to it. And part of the idea is once you have a name for something, you can better talk about it. But you're really bringing up this concept of availability bias, where if you keep seeing the same thing over and over in the news, you believe it's true, and you're not thinking about the things that you're not seeing, and you could be missing out on lots of things. And so the opposite approach is really to think from kind of first principles and think from the ground up at why things are occurring. And if you're keeping notes like that about what's really going on, you're much closer to the truth than if you're just reacting all the time.
I wanted to get this is a great topic, too, particularly in the context of public policy discussions and political debate. Chapter 5, Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics. I believe it was Benjamin Disraeli, not Mark Twain, often miscited. But anyway, we have a statistician. So lies, damn lies, and statistics, the almost criminal misuse of statistics in our public discourse.
So yeah, one of the goals of the book was to just get people to think more analytically in their lives, and so there is a value for data and thinking, in a statistical way and analyzing things with numbers, but also to know all the different ways that possibly those numbers are being manipulated. But our kind of main message here is that if you know the ways that numbers can be manipulated, you can still use them effectively in their lives, because it's better than just guessing, and it's better than just basing things on anecdotes.
And should we use statistics to help in decision making?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more complex the decision and more irreversible it is, the more you're going to want to draw on numbers. But we are hoping to help people distinguish, that quote is really saying, if you can find statistics probably on every side of every issue, but that doesn't mean all those statistics are good, but there often are good statistics out there. And so there are things like, people run systematic reviews and meta-analysis. These are terms of people are taking a deep look at all the studies out there and coming at more believable conclusions. And we're hoping to help people understand what's good and what's bad. Yeah,
the idea for us is that if people feel a little bit more comfortable with statistics, they're going to step away from, the popular publications about a topic and maybe go a little deeper to the source material, back to the concept of first principles, to go back to the source and really understand what happened in that study. And understanding where maybe it had deficiencies and where it didn't.
Right, and just because a model doesn't bear out doesn't mean that modeling is without utility. It's just you have to look at the methodology and then assess what you thought was going to happen versus what happened, and see if you can improve. And so sometimes, particularly again in the political discourse, which is sort of our address. You have to apply Hanlon's razor which I think you tackle in the book too, which is your adversary maybe or a colleague may not be out to sabotage you. It may just be stupidity or incompetence. And so it's the same case where sort of a model doesn't bear out, or a poll. We like to talk about polling. The media likes to talk about polling. Polling didn't accurately predict the outcome. That means polling is dead. Well, not exactly. It just means that you have to understand what polling can do and can't do, what its limitations are, and its utilities are.
That's right. And it's great to have kind of shows like this, and even the rise of radio and podcasting in the last couple of years has been great because it allows people who are at the source to really come on and explain more of the nuances, more than what you're just getting in a headline.
One of the other chapters that one of the other chapters in the book that I find interesting is about flexing your market power, because I think part of people's frustrations in the digital age is feeling like they have no influence over, information flow, events, ability to, establish and maintain their own footprint.
Yeah, we've tried to be. These are all very weighty concepts, so we tried to be lighter and put some illustrations here. And so this reminds me of kind of a meme from the movie Taken, where Liam Neeson is saying he's got a particular set of skills, and the way it applies here is, if you're just basically have commodity skills and you're treated like a commodity in the market, and the market dictates what you can earn, and the same is true for if you're a commodity company. And so you really have to find a way to differentiate either your skills or your product as a company. And by doing that, then you can actually, have some market power.
And before we let you go, too, I just wanted to get to the distillation of the decision matrices people can use to be more efficient with their time, which is also, of course, a universal challenge.
So I think you're talking about the Eisenhower decision matrix, and this is an idea where you can break up the things that you're doing into the important things and the not important things, and the urgent things and the not urgent things. And if something's not urgent and not important, just get rid of it. If something's maybe not important but kind of urgent, maybe you can find a way to delegate that to someone. Hire someone, or if you're working with colleagues, hand it off to someone. But the real challenge is in the things you want to make time for, the things that are important, even if they're not urgent. And that's one of the things that I think people have a tendency to get caught up in. I have to only work on the urgent things, and then they miss some of the big ideas, and they miss making the real progress on the important things that just, maybe aren't due tomorrow.
And I like the motif that runs throughout this book of just like slow down, think it through, measure twice, cut once, then, make that decision. Gabriel Weinberg, CEO, founder of DuckDuckGo, co-author of the book Super Thinking, the Big Book of Mental Models, along with Lauren McCann, who's a statistician and researcher with a degree, Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics from MIT. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And they both joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's